Hey everyone, Nathan Nerdarchy here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds, and today we're going to be talking about custom magic items. What's that? The MageForge.
MageForge
series that we're doing, and we're going to talk about my particular magic item. But first, I want to introduce my other Nerdarchists.
Nerdarchist Ted?
Dave.
Well, Dave knew who he was. All right, so I have a lot of weird magic items in mine. I took the quirk, strange like table to heart, and I really said, what can I make out of this that doesn't really do much else except the quirk and a little bit of something else, like a little extra something out of it.
So let's build a magic item. What do you got?
Yeah, so I built a magic item. It has a specific purpose, but I kind of randomly rolled it up. It's made by dwarves, because this is for my random game of random. So it's made by dwarves. It has an express purpose that has been lost to history, but someone has found a new purpose for it in in this current game. Not a PC, but an NPC was using it.
Okay.
And it's called the Hammer, and it looks like a longsword. And it looks like a dwarvish longsword, like it's all chunky and things. I mean, it's like got that dwarven strength to it, but it looks like a longsword, but it does not feel like a longsword. So it has some illusion on it, and it has a few other things. It's cause like.
So does it look like a longsword, or is it a longsword?
It looks like a longsword, but it feels like a bar. And
so if you actually touch the edge of the longsword,
you can't touch the edge of the longsword. It feels like it would be like touching a table. You know, like instead of a table edge, you're touching the table itself, even though you're like rubbing back and forth along the edge. It feels like a smooth, flat surface.
Okay. So there's no blade.
There's no blade to it, though. There's clearly looks like there's a blade to it. So they've been so it's kind of gotten like it's hidden as an innocuous item. It's like, oh, a sword. It's made by what's
the
called
dullest sword ever.
The history books call the Smith of the Moridanes, which is the group of dwarves that I have in the mountains. Okay. I know it's not much of an original name, which is why I went Danes instead of Dins. But you know, it's very similar with like that. The Danes, that kind of like group of aristocracy and things. So anyway, so it's from that group. They haven't been around for about 500-600 years. It's assumed goblins are in their mountains and that they've been driven out or killed, or they're just not around. So that's kind of like a mystery of the campaign: is are the Moridanes around, and where are they, and why did they stop producing strange but wonderful things? So the hammer not only does it not, it's
so the Mordanes, is that a dwarven clan?
That's a dwarven clan.
Okay.
That lives in a mountain range, and but
there's still other dwarves in that mountain range.
There's no other dwarves in that mountain range.
Oh, okay.
They're just no longer. They're incommunicado, either from being dead or from not talking with the humans anymore in the area and the general populace of the Azoria and Dresden, the port city. So
we don't actually know if there's dwarves or not.
No, we don't actually know urban settlements in the area there. They've seen plenty of goblins. So one of the things is that it has a quirk where it makes the sound of a gong when it strikes things, as if it's like a mallet on a some kind of metal or gong.
Okay.
And it also makes a buzzing sound. I scared somebody because it was a little too like a lightsaber when I first made the noise. And you're like, whoa. Am I getting swung at with a lightsaber? Yeah. I'm like, no, it's more like a humming noise, not a like electric plasma sword noise. So that made me feel better. But he came up with the idea, well, if it sounds like it's humming vibration as it goes by, and it makes a sound like it's metal, like striking a gong when it hits something, is it a illusioned tuning fork? Like, is it just some kind of giant tuning fork? And I was like, that's a really good idea, but I didn't have that. You know, it'd be that at first. But, you know, I may make it be some kind of thing like that. But what it's used for in the current campaign is these, the mage that's seeking immortality through eating planar beans' essence. He's got these crystals that he forms with magic, and the hammer actually strikes the slivers off of that crystal, which are then used directly for taking the essence out of the planar creatures. So he makes these magic absorbing, planar energy absorbing crystals in these giant pillars, and the hammer is actually used like a hammer to
chisel,
chisel the crystal sections off of this
now-
giant pillar.
Well, maybe that has something to do with that buzzing sound that makes like a tuning fork, where maybe like it actually, creates the perfect resonance for separating the crystals.
Exactly, which is why when he said the tuning fork, I was like, wow, I should have just made it a tuning fork. So I think I might just do that, and that's completely from just inner workings of what could this actually be, and thinking it out, like logicking it out.
No.
And I guess like that really makes the most sense that it's a tuning fork in disguise.
Now, the other thing about this item, since it's kind of illusion that its actual striking surface is more flat, it's a longsword that actually does bludgeoning damage.
Yes.
So.
And it also, I wanted to create some other kind of thing where you could, because they've really get into this magic item, which I made like a really simple thing, but I'm just like, oh yeah, I could do this more. I mean, one of the people has been researching it at the local library at the Abbey, spending a few days doing that. There's been, one of the guys has been using it, and one of them's been researching it. So it's kind of like to really get into this, like, one lone magic item. I guess that's what happens when you make magic items sparse in your campaign. Like, everyone's like, this must be awesome. And they recently just found 2 magic items, which also happen to be the same type that's rumored that the eccentric smith of the dwarves, of the Mordanes, made, and it's a hat and boots. They found a pair of hat and boots, and they're all like, oh, is it these? Because it also, but, I'll get into that later. But I thought it was kind of funny that, like, how much they're kind of influencing what's going on my end,
right,
which I thought was static. So I had this magic item planned out as just something, like, really simple that does something quirky. And it's kind of, like, transforming it into a little bit more. So right now, that's all it does. It doesn't have any pluses. It doesn't do anything crazy, just...
So is it considered a magic item?
Yes, it's considered magic.
So it's a magic item, and it does bludgeoning damage. And as far as game terms go, that's the only thing special about it. It's a longsword.
Yeah, it's a longsword proficiency. So if you had longsword, you'd be using it on that, because it pretty much works the same way, except
interesting.
You slightly.
Well, what if you say it's like a hammer? So can you about proficiency with hammer?
I guess it. I mean, principle is the same. You're whacking it with the dull edge. Like.
Well, the reason why I ask is dwarves are proficient with axes.
I guess it would
hammers.
be war. Yeah, it would be like a warhammer, like.
So like.
Or a maul, like that's all.
Martial weapon proficiency or longsword, you're saying would work, but then would hammer work as well?
Well, it probably should, because of the nature of what it actually does. That it's not a sword. It doesn't have the bulkiness of a hammer, but it has the striking power of a hammer. So, I would think it would. You would fight with it as either a long sword, or a hammer type weapon.
Or is this crazy dwarf making weapons that dwarves can't use unless they're specially trained?
Well, I don't know if he's that eccentric.
Yeah. Did he make the hats and the boots?
There's a hat and a boot set that he did that. There's talk about in the library that they pieced together different sections.
See, that's kind of weird.
But it's not that particular hat and boot that they found. But they were all excited when they found a hat and boot. And
so in his spare time, he's like running a haberdashery when he's not, forging weapons that are forged.
They don't know if it's I didn't get specific. It's not like a fedora. It's probably something like a cowl or a helmet or something.
Yeah.
But there's, again, I wanted to give them that kind of feel that they weren't like finding the Wikipedia link for what this hat was or what this boot was.
Uh-huh.
So, how you're just like, I want to find out something on the internet. Bam. It's very specific, and maybe sometimes it's wrong, but for the most part, it's very specific. It gives you all these kind of details.
Uh-huh.
Well, when you're talking about different hearsay and rumors that people research up on 300 years ago, and they're writing it down in this book, and then this book gets bound together in kind of like little kind of grouping of, well, here's all the stuff that this 200 years ago on the Mordane, and he stuck it all together in one book. Right. I wanted to give it that kind of like folio feel rather than you just picked up this section of the Encyclopedia Britannica on the Moridanes, and here's the things that are listed in it. So I gave them an idea that was not complete.
Right.
That they found 2 bits of information that they know about the smith. But so I'm giving them like the kind of like that mosaic tile feel to the history of the Mordanes, rather than well, here's a little readout of all that I'm going to give you right now, and then boom. So
are you going to expand that magic item?
that particular magic item, yes. I'm going to make it a little bit different. I was thinking about giving it the ability to like knock somebody off. Not necessarily off their feet, but give it that kind of quality of you just get hit with a really big hammer rather than a sword. Because that, like, when you're a sword fighter fighting somebody that looks like they have a sword, it's going to throw you off guard. I think the first time you really get struck with that, and it's like that type of impact force instead of some kind of cutting.
So
I don't know. I think it would kind of like be peculiar to fight that for the first time.
So you could say that the first time you're struck with this item in a combat. Make a strength check DC, whatever you think is appropriate, 10 or 12, or get moved back 5 feet.
Yeah, it could be something like that, like a shove, or maybe it gives you disadvantage, or gives them advantage against you in some way because you're like basically off. You're off your game because something happened that shouldn't have happened.
Right.
You're struck with this tremendous force instead of getting cut at with one sword.
The options are you can just give it new abilities that they've unlocked, or if they really care about this sword or hammer, whatever terminology you want to call it, you could let slip in some way, shape, or form that the item has more potential, and you could actually have them kind of quest to specifically unlock more powers.
Yeah, like maybe it has words that you can say, or if you take it somewhere special, like to this guy's shop, maybe something there does something to it.
You could strike it on his forge, and now it's a +1 item that has this ability or these abilities.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
Or maybe it's like some kind of key, or like almost like with the tuning fork thing, or some kind of like metal detector. Where it can lead them someplace. Kind
of like that, something glows when orcs are around. Well, this, maybe it starts to make an audible sound even when it's not drawn. When you're by a specific spot. Yeah, it could be audio. It could be like an audio phone call, like someone's trying to dial me in. It could be some kind of like audio lock and key mechanism that has to be brought next to it and struck on it. And then it, whatever, some kind of magic chime system opens some kind of door or secret passage or...
Well, yeah, and it could be something that comes up later in the campaign, or maybe they have to find a way to do it, and they've been carrying around with them for the past year.
Now, the tricky thing is that a dwarf that ancestors, like grandfather, great-grandfather was a Moridane. He's actually the blacksmith in the town. And yeah, I know, dwarven blacksmith. Yeah, very original. But... he's in the town of Stationton. He's already tried to buy it off of them. They wanted all this gear. They're like, oh, we want breastplates, and we want this, and we want that. And I was like, I told them the price after all that stuff. And I'm like, well, as soon as he saw the hammer, he was like, can I look at that? He was very interested. And so he offered them, to them, what seemed like a lot of money. It was like over 1,000 gold worth of different objects in his shop, plus some cash. One of the guys is like, oh, well, yeah, let's do that. While the other guy's like, well, we signed a contract that we technically have to, they were paid upfront amount of money to get this from the bottom laboratory level of the encounter in this dungeon and take it to this guy who's now in Azoria. So they should really be taking it to give back to this guy who's going to use it to continue to crack the crystals for his leader. Well, they're they're going off and doing something else, trying to rescue their friend, and who is being taken off into the Mordane mountain region. So they're probably going to hold on to it for a while, and they might hold on to it for who knows how long. And I'm trying to. So a few of them are like, well, this is like a quest item or something. Shouldn't we like do the quest? And I'm like, well, it's really not as RPG game like as that.
It's funny how MMO they went on you.
Yeah, I was like, if you don't want to turn that in, you can keep it, but just remember that he already paid you kind of some money to go get it, and he's going to pay you more money when you give it back to him. And I know it's not enough compared to what
if they're going into the Moridanes, then something should happen, and like they should like walk by something, and the thing should start vibrating, and it should open a secret door.
I think that's a good plan.
Well, just for like some old buried tomb or something of the
it could be the hidden forge of the eccentric smith.
There you go. So what do you guys think out there? Do you like the hammer? Do you have any suggestions of, how to unlock more powers, or, what kind of quest things should it make it go on there? While you're doing that, feel free to click like, share, even subscribe.
You can check us out on Facebook.
You can also join the conversation over on Reddit.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.